3, 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. I'm Lorna Virgili, Hispanic Public Information Officer. And joining us today is Dr. Keisha Davis. She's the county's health officer. Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Deputy Chief of Public Health Services. Dr. James Bridgers, Director of the Department of Health and Human Services. Dr. Earl Stoddard, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer. And our guests today are David Naiman, Montgomery County Board of Elections President, Ami Hober, Montgomery County Board of Elections Secretary, as well as Boris Brajkovic, who is the Election Director. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Mr. County Executive, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. Next week, early voting centers open ahead of this year's presidential election. In Maryland, early voting will be available from Thursday, October 24th to Thursday, October 31st, daily from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. There will be 14 early voting centers. To find an early voting location, anyone can text EV at their zip code to 77788. So you just put in EV and your zip code and then text it to 77788. If you requested a mail-in ballot that's likely arrived at your home by now, you still have until Tuesday, October 29th to request one. You can return them by mail or put them in one of the 58 drop boxes around the county. You can find a location of a drop box by going to www.777vote.org. The county's Board of Elections is already working to canvass and preparing the mail-in ballots that it's received so that when the polls close on Tuesday, November 5th, the ballots that came back early can easily be processed along with everyone else's. I want to thank everyone who will help pull this together and have a safe and successful election, from our election judges to our volunteers. They keep everything moving smoothly at poll locations and at election headquarters. We have two guests joining me today to discuss the work being done today and through Election Day to ensure a fair election and timely results. David Naiman is president of the Montgomery County Board of Elections, and Ami Hober serves as secretary. So I want to thank you both for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, County Executive Elrich, and thank you for doing a good portion of my job for me this morning or this afternoon, because you've given a lot of great information. Election Day is 20 days away, but the election is well underway, as the county executive stated. Let me give you just a few examples of things that we're already doing. First of all, the deadline was yesterday for what we call advance voter registration. That's the date 3 weeks before the election if you register in advance. Now, it's not too late to register. You can still register in same-day registration, either at early voting or on Election Day. We have 3 ways of voting in Maryland. We have mail-in ballots, we have early voting, and we have Election Day. I'm going to tell you a little bit about mail-in ballots, and then I'm going to pass it to Ami to talk about early voting and Election Day, and then we'll very briefly tell you about the post-Election Day period. So as far as mail-in ballots go, we've sent out 166,000 mail-in ballots so far and counting, because as the county executive said, there's still plenty of time to request one if you want one. It's been 3 weeks since those ballots were mailed, and it's roughly 3 weeks minus 1 day from Election Day. We've received about 51,000 of those so far back, as in our voters have already, it's roughly 35% of the ballots that went out on the first day. That have already come back. We started our mail-in ballot canvass yesterday, and yesterday we canvassed more than 19,000 mail-in ballots. That means that they have been prepared for scanning and tabulation. They might be scanned before Election Day, but no tabulation is done until Election Day. So there are no results that anybody has in hand until Election Day. To give you a sense of how many ballots that is, the total number of ballots received in Howard County is about 18,500. So we canvassed more ballots yesterday than they've received total. And we've received almost 3 times as many ballots as they have. So we plan to continue the canvass roughly 2 days a week until Election Day and roughly 3 days a week after the election. That obviously can change based on the pattern of the ballot return. Our schedule is available on our website, and if we make any changes, that will be also on our website. Our Canvas is at Montgomery College Germantown's campus. It's live streamed, so you can watch it online. You also are welcome to come and visit in person. And our big message for mail-in ballot voters: if you already know how you're going to vote on everything on the ballot, from the top of the ballot to the school board and the referenda and all of that, or if you've already filled out your mail-in ballot, please don't just put it on your coffee table, your kitchen table, leave it in your car. Drop it in a Dropbox or in the U.S. mail, and we'll be able to process it ahead of time. We have bipartisan teams that empty the drop boxes every day, and we'll be doing it twice a day once early voting begins. The deadline for mail-in ballots is 8 o'clock on Election Day. I want to make really clear to people, it is not 8:01. Don't wait. Even if you hand it to a Dropbox attendant at 8:01, we're required to take it from you, but we're required to reject it if it's a minute late. So please don't procrastinate to that level. Send your ballot back as early as you can. And if you text the word box plus your zip code to 77788, you can get a list of nearby drop boxes. So as long as you have the zip code, you can find a drop box that's near you. Now let me pass it to Ami to talk about early voting and Election Day.
Okay, and this will be relatively brief because thank you, County Executive, for having given a lot of that information already to the public. I want to emphasize two particular points. First, that you can do your early voting at any of the early voting sites, no matter where you live in the county. This is not true for Election Day voting. You will need then to vote at your own local precinct. Also, the early voting really picks up as the early voting time ends, and particularly this year it may be a little strange because the last day is in fact Halloween. So we don't know quite what will happen on Halloween Day in terms of the number of people likely to show up at early voting. But if you intend to vote at early voting, I would urge you to go both early in the early voting time period and early in the day that you choose to actually vote. On Election Day, we will have 232 individual precincts, and as I have said, if you wait to vote in person on Election Day, you must vote at your own local precinct. And you must be in line by precisely no later than 8 p.m. Again, we are required to cut the line at 8 p.m. and that's the way it is. But if you are in line by then, you are still entitled to vote. It's not too late to apply to be an election judge. Let me say, we always need more election judges. And so if you're interested in being an election judge for Election Day, please let us know on our website and you will be guided through the process. Thank you for your attention.
I would just add that if you are more a phone person than a website person, you can text the word serve to 77788 and you'll get the link for signing up to be an election judge. Now, just as I said that the election is already well underway, the election doesn't actually end on Election Day. While the media may call elections based on the data as soon as the polls close, we don't call elections until all the legal ballots have been counted. So we expect to canvass 3 times a week, starting the mail-in ballots and then the provisional ballots, starting Thursday, November 7th, until all the ballots have been canvassed. By state law, we're required to accept all mail-in ballots that are postmarked by Election Day and received up to 10 a.m. 10 days later on Friday, November the 15th. Now, it'll still take us some time to complete the canvass after that point. How long it will take will depend on whether everybody waits till the last weekend to give us their mail-in ballots or whether it gets spread out over time and we can keep up with it all. We do expect to complete the canvass in the latter half of November, somewhere from November 15th to November 30th, and the state is required to certify by December the 5th. So that's kind of an overview, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you both. Members of the media, if you have any questions regarding early voting, Election Day, Please raise your hand and we will address those questions now. Suzanne Pollack, Montgomery Community Media, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, thanks. I'm just curious, the number you gave of how many ballots have already been received. How does that compare to the last election?
I may have to defer to Boris on that, but I know it's substantially more. I know in the last election, there was a much greater tendency for people to wait until later to return their ballots. And if you think about the difference between a primary election and a general election, there are a lot more people certain of how they want to vote in a general election than in a primary election, and a lot more people in a primary who are waiting to see how the campaign develops. And of course, a lot more people voting in the general election. But as far as like what were the numbers received by this point in the primary election, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Members of the media, any more questions regarding elections? Kate Ryan, WTOP. Good afternoon, Kate. You need to unmute, Kate.
Working on it now. Thank you. I do appreciate this, and I know every year you put out the call for elections judges. How much more do you need this year than in past? In other words, by this time, the last election, did you already have what you needed? Are people more or less enthusiastic? And are you getting more questions about election security?
Let me take a stab at that, and I'm going to ask the others if they want to pipe in. We always need more election judges. We never have a sufficient number. We particularly need Republican and independent election judges because we try to do everything in a bipartisan fashion. And as you know, Montgomery County has a lot of Democrats. I would say that our election judges read the news. And they read the news in other parts of the country. They also know that they don't live in other parts of the country. They live in Montgomery County, Maryland. So the way I would describe it is that there is a healthy interest in making sure that our everywhere that our election workers are is secure. But I don't think there's a shortage as a result of that. I think people are perhaps more careful and are considering that question, but more so than they might have been considering it in the past. But I don't think it's been an overwhelming problem.
And in terms of election integrity, I think sometimes when people can see they've been to the canvases there and see firsthand, people sitting side by side, everyone working together. I think it's been very informative for a lot of folks. Are you seeing that curiosity as well this time around?
Well, we did have some media interest yesterday. Usually, it picks up a lot after the election in terms of the observers. We haven't had an oversupply of observers yet. I think we've had a lot of people coming to our website for other purposes. And I think that we're hoping that by talking to all of you and letting people know that, this process has already started and that it's open to the public, whether electronically or in person, that we will get, a greater interest. And I'm glad that you touched on our transparency because I think that's really important. We are as transparent as can be. We want people to see what we do. We even put out press releases when mistakes are made. I'm not sure how many people do that. Sometimes there are mistakes. Sometimes they're somebody else's. We want the public to know the truth because we don't want the fiction to take over. So it's very important to us that people know what we're actually doing. We want the facts out there and not just what people are imagining or fearing.
Right. And can you just to straighten out a term that I think confuses a lot of people when they hear that there's a canvas going?
Yes.
What is that versus a count?
Yes. A canvas, first of all, let me distinguish it from what the politicians call canvassing. Canvassing when you're a politician is going door to door. or sometimes they do it by telephone, phone canvassing. That's not this. Canvassing in the election administration world is preparing the ballots and including the counting of the ballots, but it's more than the counting of the ballots. So when we canvass the ballots, for example, all the ballots before election day, we don't tabulate them, we don't count them, but we do everything but count them. We examine the envelopes, we make sure that the voter has signed the oath. We look at the ballots to see whether there's any races where the voter's intent is not clear, any markings that the scanners can't read. We make sure that all of that is accounted for. We make sure that the ballots can go through the scanners. We have to hand duplicate the ballots that people send us that were delivered to them on the web, the print at home ballots. All of that can be done in advance of election day. We don't actually count the votes until we start on election day. And then after election day, our canvass includes that at the end of each day, the ballots are taken back to our office, they're counted, and we will release results at the end of each day of whatever was scanned on that day. Now, it's not necessarily a scientific sample, so you can't necessarily say that the results after our first post-election day are better than the results after our second post-election day. It kind of depends on how representative they are of the county as a whole. But that will be when the ballots are actually counted and canvassed at the same time.
Thank you very much. I think you've cleared up a lot of confusion for folks.
Thank you. And thanks for continuing to cover us.
Thank you, Kate. Members of the media, any more questions for our guests from the Board of Elections? No more questions? Thank you, Mr. Naiman. Thank you, Ms. Hober and Mr. Brajkovic for joining us this afternoon. You can remain on this media briefing, or you can depart if you need to. Mr. County Executive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for coming on this morning. I appreciate it. Actually, this afternoon. I still appreciate it. This week marks 1 year since we saw this horrific accident on our roadways. Sergeant Pat Kep was responding to reports of a reckless driver on I-270, and he left his vehicle to deploy stop sticks and was intentionally hit by the driver that he was trying to stop. The suspect had multiple prior charges for speeding and aggressive and reckless driving, but he still had access to a vehicle. And because the county doesn't participate in high-speed chases, we were not able to stop him on these earlier events. Sergeant Kep was nearly killed and lost both his legs that night. After 2 months, Sergeant Kep was out of the hospital rehabbing with prosthetic legs. He's worked hard to return to the Montgomery County Police Department on a limited basis, and he's sharing his DUI expertise, advising other officers, and working with our alcohol beverage services to prevent the sale of alcohol to minors. His strength and dedication to our community are really commendable. You should not be able to drive at outrageous speeds and go free because we can't chase you. There's got to be a way to prevent senseless accidents like this, and it's not fair to the innocent people who get injured or killed on our roadways when these lunatics create accidents. We're working with our state representatives to impose more severe penalties for those who taunt police officers and then speed off at ridiculous speeds, knowing they can't be pursued, and in the process put our community in danger. These people do not simply need to be ticketed, they need to go to jail and have their vehicles impounded so they can't continue to do this. Sending a serious message about the severity of their action is the only way to drive home the point that their behavior has to change. And I hope the legislature understands that this year and that we can get this legislation done. On Monday, a man was sent to jail after allegedly attacking a rabbi with a wooden stake. Police are trying to determine if this was a hate crime or just a coincidence. Our county's faith liaison has already reached out to the rabbi and the congregation to offer help. Montgomery County has regional service centers, and we have resources like the Office of Human Rights and the Committee Against Hate and Violence, and that can offer support as well. In moments like this, it's important to demonstrate our strong support for groups that feel targeted. We all share this community, and everybody deserves to feel safe walking down the street here. And we'll do everything we can to make sure that that is the case. In our health update, The county is holding its first flu shot clinic from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Universities of Shady Grove in Rockville. Next week, another flu shot clinic will be held at the Universities of Shady Grove from 2 to 6. Appointments are recommended. The clinics are partnership between our health department and Health and Human Services Department and the University of Maryland Medical System. We'll also be out at the Global Health Community Health Fair this Saturday, October 19th at the Clifton Baptist Church in Silver Spring from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's one of several community flu clinics the county will host through November. I encourage everyone to get their flu shots, stay up to date with your latest COVID vaccinations. I've received both because it is the best way to keep the virus from spreading throughout your house, office, and among family members. I'm going to ask my health team now to share any updates they have before we open it up to questions.
Good afternoon. There are the very, very quick update from Public Health. We have received some COVID vaccine from the state for both pediatric and adults who do not have coverage through their insurance. And if you're interested, you can call our hotline number. I'll put that in the chat here. You can call us and we'll let you know where the closest clinic is to where you live. Also, just an update that we are going into flu and RSV season. We have not yet seen many cases for either of these locally, but we do know that these are beginning to circulate now, and we would expect to see them in the near future. So we are encouraging folks to come out and get their flu shot. If they are indicated, get their RSV shot, and everyone 6 months and older is recommended to get their updated COVID shot. Also want to mention that we've begun surveying our nursing homes as we did last year. And I just wanted to mention that a few of our nursing homes have already vaccinated more than 75% of their residents. That includes the Friends House Retirement Community, Sunrise of Bethesda, Sunrise of Montgomery Village. And I want to mention that Arbor Place Dementia Care has vaccinated all of their residents. So we're very, very happy to hear that. We're continuing to collect information from the other nursing homes, and we want to share the good work that they're doing to protect their residents.
Dr. Davis?
I'll just add, we are really excited and we'll continue to feature those nursing homes that have gotten large percentages of their residents vaccinated. When we have seen with COVID of the last few years, the ones who are most likely to have complications, most likely to die are elderly, those in nursing homes. And so we know that the vaccine helps prevent those most serious effects, the hospitalization and mortality. And so if we can get that population vaccinated, we really want to focus there. And so we encourage you to look if you have family that are in nursing homes, look to see if they're on the list, ask them if they are working to get their residents and staff vaccinated. This is something that really does go a long way to help make sure that they're here to see another holiday. So encourage your nursing homes that you may be familiar with, long-term care facilities, to make sure that they are getting their residents vaccinated.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Dr. Bridgers, anything to add? Dr. Stoddard?
Good afternoon, Lauren. Nothing for me. Ready for the round of question and answering.
Yeah, Lauren, I wanted to add one little bit about something the county executive covered with the 1-year anniversary of the injuries to Sergeant Cap. I actually had occasion to be on a meeting with him about an hour ago. He and I will be presenting to the Maryland States Attorneys Association on Monday in an effort to glean their support for the legislation that we're going to be pursuing in Annapolis. That's amongst, obviously we've had this year, given the timing of when the issue emerged last year, we didn't have a ton of time before the General Assembly session to do a lot of the pre-session work that we would have liked to do on legislation. This year we have that opportunity, and so we are, and he's heavily involved in advocating for the changes that he that touch on his situation, but not just his situation, but obviously he was enforcing and trying to enforce in this space long before his injury. And so obviously he's heavily invested in and incredibly knowledgeable about what we need to do better on our roadways, and look forward to working with him and our legislature to enact these changes moving forward. So can report that he's doing well. He's back, doing some work. I personally did did some work at the academy on an evening earlier this summer, and he was there. So he's definitely back and trying to help Montgomery County move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stoddard. Members of the media, we're going to open it up right now for questions regarding diverse topics. Kate Ryan, good afternoon again, Kate.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm wondering, can you all be a little more specific about the type of legislation you want in the General Assembly this year to address reckless driving? Is there a particular measure that you want passed?
Yeah, so I'll get the numbers for you, Kate, but I think it was House Bill 1160 and the cross-filing with Senate Bill 940 last year that addressed the transportation article pieces. To summarize them quickly, number one, there are two changes. There's one to the criminal code and one to there's a set that are for the transportation article. For the criminal code, we simply want to eliminate there's a prohibition in the reckless endangerment charge that prohibits vehicle behavior from being included in that. It was done 50 plus years ago. That exclusion was included. No legislative record that we or anyone in Annapolis can find explains why that carve out was made for you can't have reckless endangerment if you're using a vehicle as the conduct that's reckless. And so we want to eliminate that exclusion, number one. And number two, within the reckless endangerment or within the traffic code, I'm sorry, there are several changes that we want to make. I think the most important one is making certain reckless driving behavior a must appear in front of the judiciary. What that means is right now you can just pay a fine, and irrespective of how dangerous your behavior is, you can just pay a fine and get some points and continue to do exactly what you've been doing. If we get you in front of a judge, the judge can review your individual case and determine whether there's additional measures that you might be required to do besides just paying a fine that would make try to abate your behavior. Obviously, in the case of the defendant that injured Officer Sergeant Kep, he was well known to police for his behavior. He had attempted to bait them into chases. He had said to them on the phone, "You'll have to catch me in order to stop me." This is the kind of behavior we're trying to address. And by making some of these must appears, we can address the behavior prior to someone sustaining a serious or worse injury.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kate. Members of the media, any other questions? Please raise your hands. Any other questions this afternoon? No more questions?
I have one hi, this is Dominique Moody from NBC4. I have one that's off topic.
Okay, hi, go ahead, Dominique. Thank you.
Yeah, this is for the county executive. I just had a quick question in reference to what was raised yesterday in relation to the plastic bag ban that's, I guess, now being proposed. I guess it's a measure to try to strengthen the current one that's on the books right now in terms of raising the plastic bag or the paper bag from 5 cents to 10 cents, and also having a part of that allocated to help with plastic, I guess you could say, pickup efforts and to help with the environment. I just wanted to get your thoughts, county executive, about that.
I've been supportive of these in general. There's a lot of plastic out there, and it is particularly the bags are hard enough to recycle, period, but there's an emerging market for plastic bags. So that's the good news. But we need to get them out of the streams and out of the streets and out of the woods. We need to get them to a place where they're recycled. Hopefully, we need to reduce the number of plastic bags. So I've been very supportive of an outright ban on most plastic bags. That's what I think. I'm much in favor of that legislation that bans the plastic bags. To me, that's the most important thing.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Dominique. Any more questions, members of the media? No more questions this afternoon? Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a pleasant day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.